Hi.
Thank
Hello.
you. Hi, everybody. Goodness.
Well, this is obviously Judith Light. I'm
Just for today.
the role of Judith Light today will be played by the woman sitting here. I'm Mark Peikert. I'm the editor-in-chief of Playbill. I'm beyond thrilled to be here today, not only in the beautiful new screening room, which I hope you guys enjoyed, but also to be sitting with Judith Light, period.
Thank you.
But particularly after having screened this episode, which she just chastised me in the hallway for calling it her shell case. I stand by that firmly. But I want to talk to you today about Transparent, and of course we'll touch on your one-woman show currently running. Because we spoke last year for SAG-AFTRA Foundation and about season 2. And having seen season 2, I could not have envisioned anything that happened in season 3. And I think that one
I
of
don't think any of us actually could.
So when you sit down to start filming the new season, what is Jill telling you?
Well, it was interesting because what happened was we were supposed to go back and shoot in June as we had all the other previous years. And this year, Amazon said, we want to drop the show earlier. We don't want to drop it in December. We want to drop it in September. And so they had us come back to work in February of this year. And so what ended up happening was Jill usually takes the writers on a retreat, and they have time, and they spend all this time talking about what the context for the season will be and what will happen and how the characters are unfolding. And nobody really had any time for that. So we were literally moving on the fly, figuring it out as we were sort of going along. I mean, they had some ideas, certainly, but it was not the way. Am I doing this right? I mean, does anybody know how to use a microphone? I think I just did that, right? And so there was a real push to find what was wanted and what was needed, and it began to unfold and unflower as the season moved on, and which brought it to this beautiful place of what it means to take a leap of faith and to not know what you're going to do and then find that out as you move along. And of course, Jill is such a genius, and she trusts in her instincts and in the people that she's chosen so much that she doesn't worry about it. And she asked all of us what we thought and where we should go. And so we all gave input. And that's the way the Transparent team works. And so I think that's why the season has turned out to be as beautiful as people are saying. I have not seen it yet because I've been working and doing this other play, but from what I hear, it's just as beautiful as the other seasons have been.
Well, and it's particularly so with your character because Shelley really, the arc that your character has throughout the season is remarkable because she starts the season still a little bit of comic relief. Just the mother that you roll your eyes at. And by episode 8, and how many people have seen the whole season? Okay, well, episode 8, you get some Shelley backstory from when she was growing up that puts everything in a very, very different light, which is alluded to in the intro before you sing a song.
And because so many of you have not seen that episode, I won't tell you anything, but there are young people, actors, that they got to play Jeffrey and myself. And so what ends up happening, am I clicking in and out? Does it sound like that? I am, right? No? Yeah? Okay, good. That there's a real, something traumatic happens, and it's how Shelley shut herself down completely. And it has to do with the theme of sexual abuse. And so that just gives you some idea of what you're dealing with, but it won't take anything away from it when you finally actually do see it. Because these young actors were so amazing. I mean, Jill showed me a little clip of them, and I was just completely taken aback with the work and who they are and what they've done.
I mean, she must have watched hours of Judith Light footage.
She did. She actually came to see me.
You made her.
No, Molly Bernard is her name, and she's remarkable. And she did come to. She said she watched not only me, but as Shelley, but she also watched all the kids. She watched Amy and Jay and Gabby, so that she would get a sense of what this Pfefferman family dynamic physically was.
Oh, wow.
She's really remarkable young actress, wonderful person too.
Well, she gets so many of your mannerisms, and I wanted to ask you today because this is a really physicalized performance from you. Just the way that you walk and the way the gestures and very tight and angular. And is that something, how did you find that for Shelley? And is that something you do for most of your characters?
It becomes organic for me. It comes out of the dynamics of understanding the character psychologically, but not from a thinking place, from a feeling place. And how that came about was there's this wonderful woman that we work with, this woman named Joan Shekel, who she has a workshop that she does in Los Angeles. And when Jill was doing this film called Afternoon Delight, she worked with Joan on this film, and she won Best Director at Sundance. And when we were starting Transparent, she said to all of us, I want to have you guys, everybody, come over and do this work with Joan. And Joan doesn't have us do anything. We never do a scene, we never do lines, we never work like that. We never work from up here. It's all in the body. And so as we were doing these physical exercises that she had us do, what ended up happening was the tightness, the tension, the sorrow, the closing down, the pain that lives in Shelley's body because of these experiences that she had when she was younger began to formulate themselves. It wasn't something that I thought about and said, I think I'll do this walk or I'll do this. None of that was true. It just began to happen organically. And what Joan always talks about, which I think is amazing, is she says that the emotions ride on the blood and the water in the physical body. So if, and we'll be doing an exercise and she'll look at you, I mean, she's so instinctive and so brilliant. She'll look at you and she'll say, get out of your head. She can see us think about something rather than be in the experience. And what we know as anybody who's an artist in any form of their art, you have to be in the moment, and you have to be a channel, and you have to allow for things to happen. And if you are thinking about it and you are contriving it in some way, it takes it away from the dynamic of what you're actually really there to do, and you're there to serve the character. You're there to serve the piece, and so that's how we work.
Has that work with Joan trickled into your other projects, your other characters?
No question about it. I would not be able to do All the Ways to Say I Love You. I'm doing this play of Neil LaBute's down at the MCC at the Lortel right now, and I would not, I would have done it in a very different way if I had not been working with Joan.
Yeah. Well, going back to when Jill was talking to everybody about what you saw for your characters and what you'd like to see for your characters, what did you tell her?
I talked to her a lot about those underpinnings that are there, that are necessary for Shelley. Nobody is just some particular way because there's a reason, something has happened. And so we just talked basically a little bit about that. What has happened that makes someone behave the way that they do? I mean, to me, the character of Shelley is someone who is so longing to be connected, so wanting to be a part of everything and everybody and have people care about her and love her, and she has absolutely no idea how to go about it. She pushes everybody away because of the dynamics of the way that she operates. And I said that had to come from somewhere. So let's talk about where that might have come from. And then they came up with that. I didn't know what they were going to come up with, but they came up with that.
So when you find out backstory like that, how do you fold that into how you've been playing a character for 2 seasons already?
Such a good question. I think the signs of it were already there, and Jill and the writers are so great that they pick up on that and then they create something out of that. And so it's organic, and again, it fold. It's just so easy to have it fold into what you're doing. It's just I read it and I said, oh, this is absolutely right. This is the most natural thing that to come out of this story. That, of course, that's what would have happened. And I don't know if anybody remembers, and somebody had to remind me of this because I had forgotten. In the first season, you know, Josh is all about music and the music business, and the kids were playing some Jim Croce, and there were all these other things about music. And at one point, Shelley says, I don't care for music. And now you look back on that, and you see what the story actually is.
No, and I think that's a testament to how just Jill Soloway has structured the entire show, from behind the scenes and the crew to the writers to the actors, because there is room to pick up threads that you didn't even realize that you had dropped, things that you can pursue. And certainly that comes to fruition a lot in season 3.
Yeah.
And particularly in, I think episode 10, the one we just watched, is the quintessential transparent episode in a lot of ways, because you're laughing at it, but you're also, it's breaking your heart at the same time.
Yeah.
And certainly every time Shelley's trying to have dinner with her family, or just connect with her daughters in any kind of way, or just have someone pay attention to her, and they're dismissive and very funny and jokey ways, and then it cuts to you and with those glasses and that hair, and just looking so vulnerable and so hurt, and you're laughing, and then you feel terrible for laughing.
And good, you should.
So how did
But that's exactly right. That's the genius of transparent, because one minute you will be in that place where you say, my God, these are the funniest, craziest, most horrible, narcissistic people I have ever met in my entire life, and I love them so much. I mean, people come up to me and say, I cannot bear you. I cannot, and I say thank you, because it's that thing. It's that you're forcing yourself on somebody, but there's a reason behind it, and so you can't just write somebody off. And they're so incredibly human and so incredibly flawed. And what you just said, I think, is so wonderful. It's like you can drop a thread, and all of a sudden, it's like this great tapestry. You can pick it up and begin again and have it be an even more elaborate tapestry.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, when in one of the earlier episodes of the season, when Shelley begins talking about how she used to sing, I had no idea that it would culminate in an Alanis Morissette solo number on a cruise ship.
Either did we.
So,
Exactly.
how did Jill tell you about what you would be doing in episode 10?
I saw the script. I mean, and she had come to me, and her sister Faith, who also worked on it with me. Faith is a wonderful writer, and she's also a musician. And and they said it's going to be Alanis Morissette's song "Hand in My Pocket," and I said, "What?" I said, "Really?" I said, that's not Shelley's era. I mean, she may have heard it with the kids, but it wasn't. It's not. It would be more like Frank Sinatra, "Fly Me to the Moon." And they said, no, this, if done right, it will tell you everything you need to know about Shelley. And and we talked about the place that it had to be done from, the emotional place that it had to be done from. And so Faith and I worked on that for a while. But, there are things that will come about that are in the script that because we're going at such a fast pace, they don't have time to tell you about. And so, like, there was in season 2, I don't know how many people here have seen season 2, but there's a bathtub scene between Jeffrey Tambor and myself, and she didn't tell me about that. I read it in the script. And I was like, you gotta be kidding. I don't think I can do this. And of course, I knew that I would end up doing it. It was the same thing with the song. I said, I don't think I can do this. But because it's Jill, and because there's such an incredible support system, and because we work from the place that we do, where everybody is so deeply and intimately connected, all things are possible. I mean, you cannot make a mistake on the set of Transparent. I've never worked at any place like this. It's like she allows you to go and move and create, and she trusts you so that you're moving in this vortex with everyone, where things start happening, things that you would never expect. There's an opening of season 2, where we're at our daughter's wedding, at Amy Landecker, Sarah's wedding, to her partner, Maura Hardin. And there was this thing that happened, and it's a family photograph, and this is done in one shot. And there was an ad lib where the photographer, where Jeffrey's character, Maura, turns to me and says, should I have my chin up or my chin down? And then turns to the photographer and says, I think chin down for you, sir, is the line. And Jeffrey, as Maura ad libs, did he just call me sir? And I said, yeah. And he said, we're out of here. That was all ad-libbed. But the genius of Jill is that she just lets something happen. Somebody else might have called cut when the lines were over or when the script was done, but never. She'll let you go on, and then she'll see what comes of that. And that's a kind of creative space that is really very, very rare.
So how daunting was it to go from this, with this amazing safety net of Jill and the other actors, to holding the stage alone every night in the Neil LaBute play?
Terrifying. I don't know if anybody here has ever done a solo show, but it is the hardest thing that I have ever done. There is no safety net. It is so scary. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is probably one of the greatest exercises that an actor can do, because of what's required. And the attention and the being in the moment and the need to be absolutely present at every second. And that's very difficult. I mean, I know that I don't do that in my life, but I've had to do it with this. And this is a 25-page, single-spaced monologue. And to learn it was incredibly daunting and challenging. And so to have no safety net and to do this and to make sure that I'm giving everything that I possibly can to the audience at every single second, it requires a lot, and it takes a lot out of you.
But
so
at least
I have one more week.
At least it's a Neil LaBute play, so it's just a fun romp.
Yeah, it's a real fun romp. I mean, I said, Neil, really? This is what you want to do? But I have to say, I have amazing stage managers, and Lee Silverman is such an extraordinary director, and the way she guided me through all of this was truly remarkable, because it goes from one emotional turn to another in the space of literally seconds. And anybody who has done a solo show can tell you probably the very same thing, just how challenging it actually is.
So now that you have the real life experience, will we see To Shell and Back in season 4?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with that. I mean, we won't know until we get back at the end of January, at the beginning of February, when we're going to start over with all of that. So I have no idea.
I mean, it must be so much fun to return to the set for a new season, because all of you seem to genuinely like each other so much.
We do. We really hold ourselves as family. And I always want to be careful talking about that. And Jeffrey says this all the time. It's sort of like, it's not kumbaya. Do you know what I mean? It's not like everybody's like, oh, we're so in love with each other. It's so new age, and isn't this fabulous? That's not it at all. It's really the work, and to go to the places we have to go to are deeply challenging. And we have to keep making it, and we want to make it safe for each other, but we absolutely adore each other.
Yeah.
I mean, in a really profound way. And Jeffrey and I have known each other for a really long time. We started out in repertory theater together. So we've had a, yes, I'm old. And we have had this really long-standing, very good friendship and have worked together through the years. But I mean, this is really, and I think that's partly why Jill put us together, because we had that kind of texture to our relationship.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because you mentioned when the song came up and the bathtub scene, and you were a little hesitant. I'm always curious.
Hesitant. I was terrified.
When you're doing a role on a TV show, at what point do you feel like you know the character a little bit better than the writers, and what will prompt you to go to bat for the character if you're being asked to do something that you think doesn't quite fit in?
I would never do that in this circumstance at all. I know you hear a lot of those stories about actors, my character would never do this. Those writers, and that goes for everybody, they sit in front of that computer and they delve into themselves in a way that is so deep and so profound. And they have a level of understanding that they see you from the outside, that it is, I consider it disrespectful to not at least try to do what's given there and on the page. We are a collaboration. We are a team. And I just don't think that it ever serves anybody. And most of the time, that sort of response comes from either being terrified that you can't make it work, or that you have not worked hard enough to see if you can make it work. And eventually, everybody knows if it doesn't work, and you're at least, but if you have at least tried something, really put yourself to the task of it, then you can say, hey, you guys, what about this? I'm not clear about this. Or let's talk about this some more. Let's find out how we can make this work in maybe a different way. But I find those things get, it's just, it writes somebody off, and I don't ever like to do that.
Yeah.
I like to really work at it and see if I can make it work, and if I can't, then I say, hey, you guys, I'm not coming up with this. I know you. And the other thing I do sometimes is I ask somebody for a line reading. And the reason I like a line reading is because obviously the writer has heard something in a particular way in their ear or in their head, and I say, tell me how you hear this. I'll fill in the blanks. I'll do the homework on it, but if you can tell me how you hear it, and it's obviously not the way that I'm saying it or communicating it, then let's talk about that and tell me what you hear. And like that.
I always wonder about that because sometimes, especially in novels, there will be dialogue without contractions. Mm-hmm. And who speaks without contractions?
No one.
And so and I always get jolted by it because I'm, doing the voices in my head, of course. I mean, that's how you read novels. You do all the voices in your head. And I get to the no contractions, and I just come to a full stop because it seems so false. And I always wonder how the author heard it in their head.
That's the point. It's like, and you don't have the luxury of asking that writer.
Yeah, well, then now we have Twitter.
And now, yes, and you can say, why did you not use contractions? And it's very upsetting for me.
Yes, please send me a voice memo.
Right, exactly. Please write back to me. Exactly.
Well, before we do some questions from the audience, which I have right here, I just want to talk about, because I grew up watching soap operas.
You're not old enough.
I just moisturize. Don't worry about it.
So do I, honey, but I don't look like you.
I'm just curious because you hear from so many people what I'm blushing. I can feel it.
Cute. So charming, right? Right.
You hear from so many people about what great training soap operas were.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm just curious, is that something that you've taken with you throughout your entire career, working on One Life to Live?
Absolutely. I mean, it was probably one of the hardest jobs that I've ever had. And I had really been very dismissive of it when I was younger, and I just thought that that was absolutely beneath me and not something that I should ever do. And it was funny, I was just talking about this today. It's like, I only was going to do feature films and theater. Can you imagine? I mean, I was young. And what I mean by that was I was young in the sense of my own maturity as a human being and as a person in the business. And I think, like so many of us, we have these pictures in our heads of what it's supposed to be like and how it's supposed to go and how the career is supposed to happen and all of that stuff. And I was not going to do it. I mean, I literally remember I came back from being in repertory theater and I sat on my parents' couch and I said, here are the things I'm never going to do. I'm never going to do a soap opera and I'm never going to do a sitcom. Yes, I am a person of my word. And so it's like, but those were the things that changed my life. And the dynamics of working for 5 years on the soap and having to learn sometimes 60 pages a night of a storyline was just incredibly daunting, but it also helped train me for learning the piece of Neil LaBute's now. And there is no better training ground, I think, because you have to be able to do something quickly and with a real sense of purpose. And a lot of the reason that soaps got a bad rap was because it wasn't at a time where there were a lot of people who had theater training, who were coming to it from the theater. And so if you brought that kind of quality to the work, something that you would work on like you would in the theater where you would be rehearsing for weeks, all of a sudden the level of the work went up to another level. And so that's why, I mean, it just trained me to do something quickly and with great resolve.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just because you just mentioned Who's the Boss, how remarkable that, I'm not going where you think I'm going. How remarkable that in your career you've spanned one of the quintessential network sitcoms and now Transparent.
Yeah.
And what a great place we are in 30 years later. That something like Transparent is not only exists, but is popular and critically acclaimed and winning awards.
It's really, thanks. Yeah, it's really remarkable. And what's also so remarkable to me is that, I mean, Who's the Boss was one of the greatest gifts of my life. I mean, I learned so much from Tony Danza about comedy and timing, and I mean, he was a real gift to me, and as was One Life to Live. I mean, those were really great learning experiences for me. But what it did was it also changed my perspective and made me look at myself as a human being, because I didn't like who I was being. I was not being the person I wanted to be. I was disdainful and really, like, I didn't like myself. And I think that a lot of that came out of just desperately wanting to be superior in some way and hold on to some picture of what I thought the way my career should go. And the minute that I dropped that and changed my whole perception of my life and who I wanted to be as a human being, everything changed for me. And so now, as you point out, I don't know that I would have been ready for a Transparent, being the person that I was being back then. I really don't. And what it also took was the real value that came to me out of my advocacy for the LGBTQ community. I looked at the community and watched the way the community was operating at the height of the AIDS pandemic. And I saw a community that moved me and inspired me. And the way that people were operating, I said, that's the person I want to be. I don't want to be angry and disdainful and prejudicial about anything. And it really changed my life. And now that my advocacy and my work as a performer have joined in this magnificent way in this show is remarkable to me. And I've had people around me, I mean, my managers of 36 years, helping me and guiding me to not just about my career, but the way to be a different human being. And so now I get to have this gift of this show that we get to talk about the things that are not right in the society, and how Jill wanted to change the conversation and change the culture and change the world. And that I get to be a part of that, and that Amazon, who is one of the greatest partners you could ever have in terms of working for anybody, it's just a remarkable moment in time, and I'm so infinitely grateful for it.
Yeah.
It's really astonishing.
I mean, yes. I was going to clap too, but I am holding a microphone. All right, so very quickly we'll go through some audience questions. Mark asks, are there any projects that slipped by you that you wish that you had a second chance at?
Off the top of my head, no. No, because I had people around me who gave me really great guidance. And, oh, wait. Because I was coming from the place that I was coming from, I was asked to audition for a play. And it was written by Jonathan Tollins, who wrote Buyer and Seller. And he wrote a play called If Memory Serves. And it was after I had just finished Who's the Boss, and it was the part of an aging sitcom star. Yeah. And Herb, my manager, said, this is a great part for you. It was a play. And I hadn't been on stage in 22 years. And I said, this is a terrible part for me. What are you possibly thinking, an aging sitcom star? And he said, you're just afraid. And I told him that he was, you know what. And he said, well, still, you're just afraid. And he was absolutely right. I was terrified. And that was one of those points in my life where I said, I don't want to operate like this. I don't want to be this person. I want to be a different person. And I said, the next thing that comes to me, they had cast somebody else, and I couldn't go up for it. And I said, okay, I'm not going to live like this. I'm not going to be that person. And the next thing I said that I get to audition for, that if anybody asks me for a play, I'm going to go at least audition for it. And the next thing that came my way was this play called Wit, where I had to be naked.
Wow.
Had to be naked and bald, and I mean, it's like if you're gonna like really like go for the extreme, it's like, there you go. But I thought, I'll go in for it, but they're never gonna give it to me. Well, they did, and I did it for almost a year, and it again changed my life because I changed my attitude. And interestingly enough, it is the group, it is the MCC Theater that I am now doing the play for Neil LaBute for. So there's this whole family, cycle that comes back around, which is really interesting. But I missed out on If Memory Serves.
I mean, I love that you were too scared to play an aging sitcom star, but you would get naked on stage.
But it was because I knew that I was living in a way that was not the way I wanted to live. It was not the person I wanted to be. It was not the life that I wanted to have. And because I was doing all this speaking to the LGBTQ community about how they inspired me and how moving they are, and I was like, I'm talking the talk. I'm not walking the walk. They're terrified of. I mean, my God, to watch these young men come out and say that they had AIDS, which informed everyone that they were gay, or that they came out and said, I'm gay. I watched them, I watched the way they were living, and I said, wait a minute, how can I be afraid when I see this in my life? And I'm surrounded by this, and my friends and people who I know and love who are dying. And I said, what am I doing? What am I talking about? I'm so full of it. This is ridiculous. And so I said, wait a minute. And it was interesting. The minute I said, I'm willing to go up for anything, it was the extreme that was given to me. Yeah. And then I said, okay, I will move forward. And that's what I did. And that's the road less traveled, and that has made all the difference.
No, and I just want to, we're out of time, but I just want to say thank you, not only for the performances, but also for the advocacy and for speaking out for all of these years, because that's not something that a lot of people would have done at the time, and that's one of the reasons why you are one of the most beloved actors that I can think of.
Thank you.
And I will be your gay in any room that you ask. All right. Thank you, guys.